Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 92 of Run to the Hills podcast, sponsored by Sheer Charge, delicious flapjacks. They've been fueling our adventures with real food made with real ingredients since 2012. Go and check them out at www.sheercharge.co.uk. Particularly recommend 20-gram protein bars, which can be eaten at any point during the day, dawn, night, and as many as you want during the day.
They're a lifesaver. Did I tell you when I came back from Joe Meek's successful Bob Graham round, all of the snacking.
Quite early on there in the podcast when I was, pointing you up from a Joe Meek Bob Graham round.
All my little dream snackage stops were shut. And luckily, I had a little Sheer Charge protein bar in the car.
What flavour protein bar was it?
Oh, wow, you caught me on the spot. I can't remember which one it was. It was the light blue packet.
Oh, the vanilla one.
Yes,
yeah.
Super
I
good.
love those ones, but the like orange chocolate one, oh my God, that feels like a dirty snack. And it is such a good snack that you wouldn't feel as disappointed if that was all that was in your glove compartment. The other day I put my hand down in that glove compartment and I just found melted chewing gum that Bryn had spat out and then put down there. Thanks, Bryn. No snack, just some chewing gum. Anyway, how are you? How are you? Where are you?
What's the view of your window today? Every weekend I seem to come on the show on a Tuesday and I'm absolutely pooped from what I have been doing at the weekend.
Having your best friend as an addict, really, isn't it? Every week they're not learning and they're coming on, they're going, I've done it again, Eddie. I've done it again.
I had a great weekend supporting the Palmos 110 and 200. Friend of mine, Chris, says, raced it and had a good race. I think 26 hours. So he was pretty chuffed with that. And a bunch of us went down to support him from Saltburn onwards through the night. And ended up doing, I didn't really know what I was doing until I started. And I was like, well, I might go to Square Corner. Then anyway, I ended up going to White Horse Car Park. So all in all, it was 36 miles, about 10 hours of...
Oh, 10 hours.
10 hours of running and walking. And bear in mind, like a lot of these, when you do, say, Lakeland 100, for example, you've got a whole day where you've been awake and then you run into the night. So you're pretty shattered. So I just been, Gary, dad, husband, friend during the Saturday and then run through from 10 o'clock at night all the way through to Sunday morning. Yeah, I was luckily, Lisa looked after me well on Sunday because I just went to bed when I came in and then just did nothing all day. Brought food every now and again. It was awesome. But I was absolutely pooped. So I'm pooped again. I'm supposed to do a workout today. Am I going to do it? I don't know if I'm going to do it or not. I'm so tired. But last week, all in all, about 20 hours again of exercise. 10,000 feet of climbing and about 80 miles of running. And I did try a 6x1K, but that was on the back of Old County Tops. So I would say I'd give it about a 6.5 out of 10, that workout. I was still super tired. But I'm kind of wrestling with this. If the workouts aren't going that well, how important is that for a race like the Lakeland 100 when I'm still big volume, lots of hours, lots of miles, lots of climbing? Do I linger on a few negatives or should I look at the whole picture and thinking, I'm doing okay? But
can't work on everything at once. You can't work on the amount of volume and and do workouts at the same time. You have to have one or the other.
Yeah.
That's when a plan comes in handy, Gary. Not just look, I've just got my new Garmin, and this is what you follow? Because every time I turn it on to go for a run at the moment, it tells me to rest.
Oh yeah, it gives you the suggestions.
Discretion, rest. So I'm like, brilliant. Done.
Well, it said to me after I'd done all of that 10 hours, there was a recovery run, which is like, what the hell?
People get so, and mine keeps going as I'm running, and I'm doing my best, Gary, at the moment. I'm doing my best. It goes minus base condition -2.
Oh yeah.
Oh, you can do what?
Turn it off. It's all noise.
What does bother me in this? I just laugh, going, we all know I'm in incredible condition.
How can they make a product that fundamentally is kind of
flawed?
Yeah, I feel, it's like, see some clever people over at Garmin, and then we've all got these gadgets on our wrists, and the feedback it's giving us, I don't think is worth taking in half the time, to be honest.
No, it's not. You're right, turn it off. But I'm only I just like to see, I laugh at it. But I know that some people get quite upset when their training status is detraining or unproductive.
I saw a few people running around the car park the other week trying to get their beep it over to the mile. Well, I was guilty of that a few years ago.
No attention at the moment. I have no interest in anything apart from surviving and the heavy breathing. The heavy breathing has slightly dropped a little from near oxygen.
Can I just give a shout out to all the volunteers though on the Harmos 210? I only saw the people through the night, and I wasn't even part of the race, but I was well looked after. And they're putting in a shift because early doors, there's the checkpoints quite busy, but the latter stages, quite a lonely affair, and it goes on for hours and hours and hours. Like the winner of the 110 was 19 and whatever hours, but the winner of the 200, I think was pushing 60 hours, 50 something hours. So they're out a long time, the volunteers. So yeah, kudos to all of the volunteers.
I did listen to last week's podcast. I don't often listen to it because, my God, I'm annoying. I realised I went on and on last week. Even I got bored of myself, and I love myself. So I'll make it quick this week. Back to Running 101 camp is continuing. I might have slightly overdone it yesterday. Okay. Might being the word we could take out in that sentence. I did a gym. I like to start my Mondays with a gym workout because I feel like I've got one ticked off straight away. Gym workout done. Then I came home, ate a bowl of cereal, bike, went on my Swift workout plan, a bit like my Garmin workout plan, and it gave me a fast, easy session working on cadence. Get in. Heart rate didn't go above 129. That is the sort of Swiss session I enjoy.
Yeah.
And then I was on driving duty again for the geography field trip, so I had to go back up to the 2,000 meters. I was prepared this time. I was much more prepared. So I went off and I thought I'm going to do the same route, but the other way around as last week, and let's just see if it's a little bit better. Surely it can't be worse than last week. And it was much better. And actually I tagged on quite an extra bit of climbing, quite a lot of technical trail. My ankles are so wobbly still, but yeah, all good. But it was quite long. I was out for an hour and a quarter. Oops, that is not back to running. That was a bit too much. So I'm a bit tired today and I'm a little bit sore, I won't lie. So I will be heavy icing. I will be on my bike later. I have just done a little jog because I've got the dogs. There's no difference really. It just feels a bit slightly sore. So it's a little shout out. Yesterday was quite big. So I don't need to do that again today. I have a quieter day today, but the running is coming back. Yeah, I think like last week I couldn't do any uphills, was just too much. And yesterday I ran for an hour and a quarter, and I can now go out and do half an hour, 45 minutes. I mean, the breathing is still a little elevated. There's no pace, there's nothing, but I'm just, ticking off little bit by little bit. And it's coming back. You just have to not think about when is it coming back and how long?
I think it's always quite refreshing because you do get down in the dumps, but it comes back quicker than what you think.
And I've come back from 3 kids, so I know
this
process is not as if I've ever been unfit, and I'm not unfit. I've just can't quite get the running coordination. That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
The running coordination back, but it'll come this time next week. My God, this time next week I'll have done a marathon probably. Yeah, all good. We went away on a little camping trip because we had a long weekend. The kids don't get half term; they just get like these extra. They get like a bank holiday weekend, and then the French stick an extra day on.
Okay.
So they got because they don't go to school on Wednesday, and then they just give them Thursday off too. So then we got Wednesday anyway. So we went off down to Lake Passy. If you've ever been down near Chamonix Way, down there, lovely lake overlooking Mont Blanc. Beautiful, really, really hot. You might, if you're watching this on YouTube, my face might be a little bit rouge. I've burnt all the skin off my lips. Made some classic bikini errors. In the morning, where Bryn went to do something, I can't remember. I had the kids, and so we spent the morning by the lake. And I've got really burnt just down the side from where I managed to get all the sun cream on, just that bit you can't quite reach with your hand.
Yeah.
A hand mark where I got the sun cream and stuff. I also think the sun cream I was putting on the kids was a little bit out of date, because there was definitely a bit of burnish. I was like, I think we need to do something. We had a great time, but oh my God, camping is so tiring. It's so tiring. There's no like the admin of everything.
Yeah.
There's no like, and the kids don't stop. And oh my God, they were so tired of ferals. Sunday was Mother's Day in France. I said, are we going to do anything? Going to get anything? And everyone was just so tired and grumpy. I was like, well, this is a joy.
Yeah.
So I just let them watch TV really, and did like 5 loads of washing anyway. But it was nice to have a little change of scenery. Start the base tan, Gary, to start the summer tanning.
I always make tanning admin errors. I never sun cream up enough, and I'm quite mindful of it, but I always seem to be on the wrong side of the sun.
Oh no, I always miss bits, and every year I go, it's the same bit, that poor bit of underarm flappage I miss every year for the last 42 years. Anyway, all good, heading in the right direction. I'm thinking about races. I've made a sort of long-term plan, but I'm not going to share that yet.
Not even share it with me.
Not even share it with you, Gary, my BFF forever. Because let's just leave it another couple of weeks, because I'll share it and then everyone will go, are you going to do that race? You said you were going to do it. And then I'm like, still injured. Anyway, got some exciting results. Did you see the UK Ultra results? I've just got the 100K here. Owen Davis won in 8 hours 13 and Becky Wright in 10 hours 23. Each taking home, last week I mentioned it, £2,000 winning check.
Oh, that'd be nice.
I was down there, 2,000. What would
How
you
many
spend?
cheer charge bars you could buy with £2,000?
Well, I reckon, how much are they? £1 and a bit? What would you spend if you won £2,000? Would you just go in the bank account?
Ooh, well, I'm moving mentally towards buying some poles, so maybe I would treat myself to some poles with the £2,000. Nah, I'm easy come, easy go with money. I'd probably spend it. What yourself?
Oh, yeah, that would have probably just paid for my flights to go over and my accommodation. Yeah, it would go in the bank, wouldn't it? Bank of mum and dad. Probably take the family out for a slap-up burger.
Yeah, maybe one of these races that I kind of wince at the cost. I'm not saying they're expensive, but sometimes they're mega bucks. So it's like, yeah, we could do that and treat the family.
What did I look at that I was like, whoa, it was a multi-stage race. And it's like £4,000. I was like, oh!
Oi, oi, oi.
Oi, oi, oi. Zegama Marathon. Did you watch any of the live? Oh no, I expect you're asleep. It was a mixed bag, the live feed. It was really cool to see like the ambience of the crowds and stuff, but the commentators, like, it was all a bit, as with all these things, like they can't tell who the runners are. Who's that coming out of the woods? Where are we on the course? It's just like there's just random bits of people running, but it's good to get the flavour. Are you going to do the results?
Yes. Oh my goodness. So yeah, Killian took the win, and how do I pronounce that?
Minka Brinkman.
Well, she took the win for the ladies, and both of them got the course record. So that's awesome. And we did a bit of deep dive into Killian's details. He had an average pace of 8 minutes and 13 seconds, and he had a slower smile. 15, just under 16 minutes for a slow smile, but that did have 1,200 feet of climbing.
No. What, that mile? I thought you meant the whole course. I was going to go.
No, yeah, just that mile. So it was 1,200 feet, and it's just under 16 minutes. So yeah, super duper fast. And his gap pace, Strava adjusts this, was just under 6 minute miling for the whole race. So that is just smoking fast. I was trying to look at his shoes. I couldn't see any photographs of his shoes. I'm such a...
No, not got a close up. They look a bit hokerish. It looks like there's quite a lot of cushioning.
Yeah.
He's gone all black for the kit.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they're prototypes, they're calling them at the moment.
Can you imagine the pressure being that level athlete and there's always a target on your back?
Yeah, but I think if you're as good as Killian, you're like, I can imagine being that good. You're like, no one can touch me. There's nobody that can beat me unless I fall over. It annoyed me as I was watching it, and he came and he finished and his kids were at the finish line and they were like, look, being a parent is no excuse now for not winning these races. And I was like, no, wait, where's his wife? His poor wife is like 3 hours behind him, has been like working her butt off the last few years to get back into shape postnatal after his kids. Killian hasn't had to do anything. So don't say, oh, look how amazing he is. I'm pretty sure that Killian's life has carried on pretty normally. If he can still do about 30, 40 hours training a week with 2 small children, it's the
I don't look at his Strava, actually. Yeah, I'd be curious.
The mum is the one that should be having the kudos behind getting herself back in shape. Anyway, rant over.
It's a good comment because I, on the face of it, I didn't really think much of that comment, but I've not done a deep dive into his hourly exercise commitment now and post pre-children. Sorry. Yeah. Interesting point.
Anyway, enjoyed it. Loved watching that. The crowd looked amazing. Something I would quite like to. How do they run that fast? We've got some work to do, Gary.
The gap is just like, my goodness me.
Gap, like when I'm doing like hill reps, and if I get a gap pace near like 8-minute mile, I'm like, that was flat out. It's for like a hill rep, let alone mind-boggling.
Well, I was down at the Homos 110 and the Homos 200, so I thought I'd give these guys a shout out. And in the 200, Stephen Davies took the win, 52 hours and 27 minutes. I think that's pretty good, but a lot of people aspire for a 24-hour 100, so he's done 2 of those and a bit on top. I think that's a super good run, Stephen. And I don't think he was in the lead all the way, so I think that's awesome. If it was still a race, brilliant, really, really well done there, Stephen. And Kendra Wedgwood took the win for the ladies too, 59 hours, in 29 minutes. And I think she's, it's not seconds, obviously, it's a good half an hour under, but I bet she's super chuffed to get under the 60 hours. It keeps it nice and tidy, the numbers there. And then Eddie Healy in the 110 took the win, 19 hours and 23 minutes. And I'm pretty sure that was a course record. So well done there, Eddie. And Amanda Rod for the ladies in 28 hours and 13 minutes. I think Eddie had a bit of badger action. I saw some Facebook live stream, some badgers on the trails.
Oh, okay. That's what you're talking about.
Awesome.
It's a modern term for something I should know about.
Yorkshire term for something. Yeah, well done, everybody. Awesome run.
This week, we are delighted to welcome to the show Daniel Bai and Boff Whalley to talk all about their running show. It's a little bit better than ours, maybe, Gary, in some places, entitled These Hills Are Ours. Gary's laughing. Cleverly crafted stage show all about a particular running adventure, but it's also interwoven with the most beautiful soundtrack, which Boff plays on his acoustic guitar, some lovely songs. Alongside that, they've also produced a film about, it's quite complicated, they explain how it works, but it's a beautiful film called The Wild Tour. It's on YouTube if you just type that in, all about a journey across Devon, showcasing this show, which is sort of developed to another show, all due to COVID. It's tricky to explain. Here's our interview. Just enjoy it. What a pair. We absolutely love this. Here's our chat with Dan and Boff. Guys, thank you so much for coming on the show today. This is our first time Zooming with 4 people. Gary and I, we're on the top. Are you on the top? I like that. Thanks so much. We were in a row. Thanks so much for coming on the show. Where are you? What is the view from your window? And have you been for a run today? Boff, you start because you were first on the Zoom call, so you already go.
So I'm in Otley in West Yorkshire, just right at the foot of the Yorkshire Dales, and the view out the window, this actual window, I'm in the basement.
Oh, it looks lovely though. What a lovely basement.
You can see a little bit of green there.
Yeah.
That's like the coal hole.
Are you subterranean in your basement?
No, it looks a lot nicer than it actually is, to be honest. There's a couple of dock leaves sticking up there, but that's funny. There's a piece of tree there that's something like 500,000 years old. Can you see that in the window?
Wow, I can
Harry,
see
it's
green.
closer than you.
That was given to me by it was dug up from some peat hillside by a friend of mine, Andy Stein, who used to run for Holmfirth. He was an incredible runner. He won the British Championship a couple of times, fell running. And I did some music stuff for him, and he gave me that in return. And I just remember Casey, my partner, going, "What is it?" I don't know, but it looks nice. I had to ring him up. "What's this thing you've given me?" I went running this morning just for about an hour in the rain, pouring rain, but really lovely.
All I'd really
We
do.
won't ask any stats because we know you're just about an hour.
Yeah,
Classic.
I never take a watch, so I'm never really sure how long it is.
That sends me into turmoil, that, Bob.
I know it does with Dan as well, I think.
You wouldn't do any. You literally don't record any of your runs.
No.
If he goes for a run with me, he always asks.
I see.
Yeah, I did see that. I saw that in your film, and he asked, and then you started going into some deets, some key and stats, and he's like, "No, honestly."
Closed him down.
Wants to give me more. I'm like, no, no, I do look at the clock when I get back in. I'm not completely Neanderthal.
What about yourself, Dan?
Well, my view is considerably less pleasant than Boff's. I'm sitting in the car in a lay-by by the side of an A road somewhere in Staffordshire, which is the nearest place I could find to our campsite where I had some 4G. Because the campsite said it had Wi-Fi, but did it have Wi-Fi? Oh no, it did not. So I was like racing pell-mell to try and get on the call in time. So the view is rainy tarmac. It's like every marathon you've ever hated. And I have also been for a run today. It was, Boff would love me to be able to say exactly how far it was. It was about 5.8 miles, something like that. A sort of nondescript bread and butter run, which I was nevertheless very pleased about because I've been really ill for most of this year, and I've clocked 2 close to 6 mile runs 2 days in a row, and that's pretty massive for where I've been this year. So I'm feeling pretty pleased about that, and I'm going to do it again tomorrow. So feeling good.
Don't overdo it.
Thanks, Dad.
Yeah.
Are you on a holiday, family holiday? Or you just really love camping?
Yeah, it's half term, so we're camping. So I looked when we put this podcast in the diary. I looked and there was nothing in the diary, so I thought, oh, perfect. And then about 3 days ago, I thought, oh, that's why there was nothing in the diary.
Story of my life, don't worry. Yeah. And then you're like, it's fine, there'll be Wi-Fi. And you get to these random places and I'm frantically messaging Gary going, oh no, cancel.
I like it though, when you can't get a phone signal, although I'm pretty terrible with my phone when there is a connection, but when it's not there, it's just that moment of, no more beeps, no more notifications. How are you with camping though? I think Eddie and I were just chatting today that camping's wonderful, but we come away from that holiday feeling probably more tired than when we started the holiday.
Yeah. Especially if you've got a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old who won't go to sleep because it's the holidays and there's a playground and it's broad daylight. Yeah. But they'll also wake up at 5 because there's no curtains. So yeah, it's gonna be fun.
2 weekends in a row we've done camping, and then one of them turned to me and was like, "Mum, you've got something like really weird under your eyes. It's like really baggy and wrinkly." I'm like, "Yeah, that's old age."
Both of you actually in the Bobbing Around Club. Boff all the way back in 2005 though. Wow, you were doing it when nobody was really doing it. Not like they are now. Where
around Gary when it wasn't marked.
Well, if I go on a Keswick now and I drive past Thelkeld and there's not a VW camper van in the cricket club, it's like it's really unusual. But yeah, a bit about both of your running journey would be awesome, please.
We did before you did your Bob Graham, Dan. Yeah. Remember we did a recce and we came off. I can't remember where it was now. Was it? Anyway, we kind of followed down where I'd kind of done it many years ago. I said, it's kind of roughly down here. You kind of follow this wall for a bit and go down this. And we were just trogged through this really like kind of waist high heather and rocks. It was so slow. And then later I realised there's a really good path, like 50 metres away, which is now been created as part of the Bob Graham.
Coming off Great Calver.
Yeah, I was like, oh, right.
Oh, yeah. So there's a couple of ways off Calver. You can go through the heather, or you can do a little shortcut and then down. I suppose you hug the fence line down to the river. But sounds like you went through the heather. That
we
one.
Did. It was a mistake.
Big mistake.
Yeah. But anyway, running journeys. You mean running journeys as in why did you start running?
Yeah.
Well, I did I left school and did the Pony Bolton Marathon in 1981. It was the first mass marathon in Britain. I think there were 10,000 people running it, including Jimmy Savile. And I'd never run before properly. I'd never run more than 1,500 meters anyway at school. And I thought I'll have a go at that. I had some high-tech Silver Shadow training shoes. Brilliant. And I got round. Took me 4 hours 15, and I thought, yeah, that was all right, but I'll never do that again, because it was just kind of a little bit tedious after the first quarter of an hour. So I didn't run again then till about 1986 or 7, and then I discovered fell running. I saw someone do a fell run who was a punk rocker who I knew. And he won the race, and I thought, well, if he can win one of these races, that's the sport for me. Yeah. So I just got into fell running, and I fell head over heels for fell running, quite literally often, and just I've never stopped.
Did you get quite serious at fell running?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I became obsessed, absolutely obsessed, and I was kind of reasonably good for a little while, but I always wondered whether I was obsessed and loving it so much because I was doing okay. And I was really glad to find out in the kind of late 1990s, early 2000s, that once I started dropping away from being near the front end, that I still absolutely loved it. Oh, and I can go out now and race and finish really well down, or I can just go out for an hour on my own. I just love it in the same way as I used to love it back then.
Have you run another marathon since the...
No, absolutely. I've done mountain marathons and stuff, but I've never run a road marathon.
That must have been quite balmy back then. 10,000 people doing a road marathon. Nowadays, it's quite commonplace. But
it was absolutely mad, yeah. And it was just for the spectacle. I just thought, this looks weird and interesting. I'm going to enter it and have a go. Yeah.
And how would you train? I'm curious how you train these days. If I went on your Strava, if you've even got Strava, Boff,
I certainly haven't.
But would back then, would we have seen you doing like a 6 times 1K repeat or progression run, or were you just like rinsing yourself
Harry
out?
wants your training plan, basically. So.
When I first started, I was just going out trolling along, not really knowing anything about it. But once I'd met Gary Devine and Pudsey and Bramley, and they were really serious fell running club, and we did track sessions, hill reps. It wasn't kind of particularly well measured or anything, but we just mixed it up constantly, and we had a really good group. So we were actually racing against each other as well in training, and we got really, really fit and sharp.
Power of the group, like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
What about yourself, Dan? We were at Bob Graham dinner together, actually, but we didn't.
We were, yeah. I think we were the last 2 to get our certificates because both of ours got lost.
Yeah, there was a muddle up, wasn't there?
Yeah, they wrote mine out there and then. Like they had to. I think they had to sort of like have a little riffle through the lists to make sure I wasn't just a chancer who'd rocked up hoping they'd give me a certificate.
Yeah, I didn't want to touch my ink because I thought it was still wet.
Absolutely, yeah. But yeah, I was a road runner for quite a long time. I ran a bit at school. I ran like middle distance for the school, and I was okay. I wasn't as good as Boff, but I ran. Then I got into like 10Ks and marathons in my 20s because I played for a football team for a bit, and then moved to a different city and didn't have a football team anymore. Saw a poster for a road 10K and thought, oh yeah, I'll give that a go. And yeah, just really got into it, really got into road running for quite a long time. I think it's possibly Boff who got me into running off-road. I remember talking to him probably about 10 years ago and him talking about fell running and in particular talking about the Bob Graham round. And I just remember thinking, well, that's obviously not something any human could ever possibly do. But yes, it turns out that Boff had done it, and I didn't quite believe it, but just became fascinated by it. Probably fascinated by it for a couple of years before I actually did it. And then I got more into kind of trail ultra stuff, but kept thinking maybe humans can do the Bob Graham round. Maybe, because, you know, I'm a fairly ordinary runner. Boff was a really competitive runner, and I'm never going to trouble the front end of a race. I once won a park run, but that's the extent of that's
Can't
the
win a
only
park
thing I've
run,
ever
Dan.
won.
Sorry to burst your bubble. It's not a race.
No, not at all. Lots of people have won park runs. That was kind of my point.
Gary, you're not that podcast. You're kind and respectful to the guests.
Sorry.
All I'd ever won before that was the 1500 meters and the 800 meters on school sports day in like 1995. But yeah, I had a good year during the course of last year and thought maybe I'll just have a crack at the Bob Graham and see how it goes. And yeah, it turns out that ordinary people can get round with a little bit of help from their friends.
It's inspiring, you know, other people do it, and you think, yeah, I can do it. Have a go at that. And what would your training like? Are you, like I say, would we see you in a progression run, hill repeats?
Yeah, all that. Yeah, all absolutely weighed and measured to the millimeter. We sort of play up to these stereotypes a bit in the show and the film that we'll talk about in a bit, but there is a large dollop of truth in it, to be sure. There are lots more stat-obsessed runners than me, but I'm quite happy to play the part.
I like stats when I'm fit. I love it. I can't get enough of those like Strava segments and all that sort of stuff. But at the moment when I'm not fit and coming back from injury, oh my God, I'm just like, keep it private, account private, delete. Let's move on. Now we've got a little flavour of your running background, and you're both very humble and made out that, like, yeah, you've done a bit of jogging. Let's talk about, we're going to first talk about the Wild Tour. If you're listening to this and you have access to your computer, you might even want to pause the interview now and go and type into YouTube the Wild Tour Run Across Devon and have a little look. It's about 50 minutes, a film all about Boff and Dan's tour and their run across Devon. And even if you just watch the first couple of minutes to give you a little bit of flavour of what we're going to talk about, it's truly, honestly, it's one of the most beautiful things I've watched on television ever. The way that it's shot, the singing, the accompaniment of just the quiet, the stillness. It is the most wonderful film. So if you can watch that first, almost before listening to what they're going to, what we're going to ask them now, it'll give you a little bit more flavour. Or if you're out and you run now, when you get home and you're doing your stretching and your mobility, put it on and enjoy that film. So just fill us in about how that came about, how that show came about, and the film. Either of you, both of you, sort of where that idea came from?
Well, the show These Hills Are Ours was meant to go out on tour on the 30th of March 2020. This is a theatre show that we've been touring, and obviously nothing happened on the 30th of March 2020.
Isn't that literally lockdown date? It was very.
It was about a fortnight. It was about a fortnight after lockdown. So we were in rehearsals. We were getting towards being ready to go out, and then obviously it didn't happen. And so the following year, May 2020, we'd rescheduled the tour. We rescheduled it for autumn 2020. We rescheduled it for like February, March 2021. And then there was some touring in May and June 21 that started to finally look like it might actually happen. And the first bit of that was 5 dates across Devon.
Okay, I see.
And we had this, we had this thing that whenever we did the show, we were always going to invite the audience out for a run the morning after, because the show is stories of runs that we've been out on, particularly runs from the centre of a town or city to the top of a hill overlooking that town or city. So we thought everywhere we go, we'll invite the audience to go on one of these runs, and it'll be another story in the bank. But these Devon venues, it was kind of rural touring, and they were all close enough together that it was like we could actually organise this so that rather than just going for a run as an out and back or a loop, we could run from venue to venue. We could run to the next show. And then we'd made a couple of short films the year before where we took choirs on long walks from a town to the top of a hill. And we still had a bit of funding left over from this, but the films that we were going to make with that funding went the way of everything in 2020. So we thought, why not make a film of a journey from one end of Devon to the other, doing this show for the first time after a year. And it kind of became about all of the things we hadn't been able to do for the previous year. We hadn't been able to sing together. We hadn't been able to talk to an audience. We hadn't been really able to go for a run somewhere that was more than, outside the front door. So it became this celebration of all the stuff that we'd been missing. And so it all kind of fell into place around the fact that it just happened. It was kind of fluke that we were going to end up premiering it in this completely weird way, with audiences capped at 30. Most of the shows had to be outdoors. So it was all incredibly socially distanced. And
but none of that comes across. It just comes across in the film that it's meant to be like that almost.
Really intimate.
Yeah.
Well,
it felt like, it just, even though it was like, what a weird way to premiere a show, it ended up feeling really perfect. And I really will never forget the first performance there. Boff started playing the opening song, and I could just, the shivers down my spine, the kind of, we're here, we're doing it at last. And to be
quite nervous getting back into it, having had quite a lot of time out.
Well, we were nervous because we'd not had any rehearsals in person for that whole, we'd done rehearsals on Zoom. So we had one rehearsal on the day of the show. So we did think, well, this could be a total shambles, but let's try and enjoy it. And in lots of ways, it was a bit of a shambles, to be honest, Boff, wasn't it? But just the spirit of, and everyone was so happy to be there, just to be allowed out. Everyone was delighted. But whether or not they thought it was a shambles, they were really lovely afterwards.
Does it change much? So as it progresses, would it evolve? Would the lyrics change significantly? And also, I suppose, is what is touring now quite different to what you visualized the original tour being?
It's not that much different, really. But it over that year of lockdown, when we were just getting in touch on Zoom and kind of going through parts of it, it really changed during that. Yeah, for all sorts of reasons. But the show is based on, not on running across Devon. It's based on a run that happened that's totally separate to this. And so we wanted that to carry on being the backbone of the story, because we liked it as a story. And because we could use that story as jumping off points to talk about, land access and land ownership and the history and culture of, why people run and why you get to run in certain places. And those things haven't changed, and we still think it's important to say those. Having said that, to be honest, a lot of times I'm just kind of going off at tangents when we're sitting there talking to audiences, because
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, you just think of something that comes into my head and think, that's interesting, I wonder if I should go there. And before I've thought about it, it's come out of my mouth. And I can hear Dan thinking, when's he going to come back?
Honestly, just like Gary and I can see his face if I go off the script, which we've got down to the left of this.
Ooh.
I see the panic in his eyes go, Let's talk a little bit about the running in between the shows, because that's sort of like just as important in the film as the shows. You were blessed the first day with the most, who was it that made the film for you? He must have been like, this is incredible, this weather.
We knew that the weather was forecast to be atrocious from about day 3 or 4.
Like January.
It was unbelievable. I've rarely been more wet and windswept than when we went over Dartmoor. But I think that Bevis, who made the film, was probably delighted by the terrible weather, because it made for a more interesting film.
Definitely. He loved it. He absolutely loved it.
Was he telling you where he was going to be? Because you were never arguing, or like in that like silent mode where you haven't spoken for 40 minutes because you're so hungry and angry at each other because you're always approaching. You can hear like laughter and happiness, and then you like play poo sticks. You do make it look, you sell it a little bit. It was kind of like, even though the weather was bad, the running was pretty idyllic. And then, but now you're explaining, I guess probably as well, you were so happy to be out of your houses and maybe away from small children that it was.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth in that.
I've always really loved running in the rain. It's kind of It's one of those. There's a great song by Paul McCartney called Mamounia, which is you've never felt the rain until you felt it running down your back.
Yeah.
Or down your pants, as you
Yeah, or down, or kind of soaking your underpants through. But I love all that. I think it's just the chance to be out in weather that normally you wrap up so well that you don't get affected by it.
Yeah.
So it's good to actually feel it and feel like you're in it, in it. Not
That's magic. You know, until you kind of go over the line where it's not safe. But yeah, I think it's just a wonderful experience. But my goodness me, it was proper northern weather. Some of the shots looked like, my goodness me, that would have took ages to set that up. But was it literally he'd go off and kind of set something up without bothering you two?
Yeah,
basically, yeah. He knew where we were going to. Well, we had a tracker and we had a planned route, which we mostly stuck to. So him and the kind of production manager who also drove the van would pick a spot on the route, look at an OS map and think, yeah, that looks like that'll probably be a decent bit of filming to be had. And they'd go there and sometimes they'd have missed us and sometimes we'd gone the wrong way. But more often than not, we'd come past. And the instructions were that we just carried on unless told otherwise. So sometimes I'd get a text message a couple of miles before from Pete saying, you're going to come up to a bridge and Bevis thinks it looks lovely. So could you just stop at the bridge and look out at the river? And I remember thinking, I don't want to do that. That's not, I would never do that while out on a run. Just stop and look at a river sort of winsomely.
It could be a stronger segment.
Well, yeah. But then that's where the poo sticks came from. I thought, well, if we're going to stop, there's going to be a reason for it. God damn it! So we might as well introduce a different element of competition. But then poo sticks became something we ended up doing about half a dozen times through the next few days. Let's
talk a little bit about the route. There's a lot of shots of, well, Dan, you're mainly leading the way under what is not a path, and Boff follows. How did you plan the route and your map reading? You didn't put it on your watch.
You're clutching a map.
Clutching a map. How did you plan the route? And did you find some of the trails were a little bit neglected, perhaps because of COVID or perhaps because landowners didn't want you on them?
Bit of both. There were lots of, I mean, there's lots of shots of me looking at a map and scratching my head as well, isn't there? It's not like I was a champion orienteer getting around that. But yeah, there were some paths that were, there was one, I remember one in particular that was covered in barbed wire when it was quite clearly the right of way. And quite frequently there was a field full of bulls just to really make you think, oh, I don't really fancy going that way. And so you're kind of sidling along the edge of this field, hoping they haven't noticed you, which then inevitably they have. I planned it with a mix of, what's it called, Komoot, and just looking at the hard OS and trying to, we obviously needed to join up the venues, but we also wanted to join up some high points. So we wanted to go over Dartmoor. We wanted to try and meet as many peaks as possible. And I think there was one point where we added an extra peak because it was just there, just near the end of one day. And it seemed a shame not to have a view at the end of the day.
I love at the end of the day that you finish off in a really quintessential cricket club, football club, and he sort of zooms in on your feet and you can see the disgusting floor. I've done loads of multi-day races like that when you're like, you get to the finish and they're like, here's your changing room, and you're like, oh, that same smell of like old men's boots and whatever.
Old men's crotches.
Yeah, well, I didn't want to, I'm a lady, I didn't want to say that.
Yeah. And
then you appear doing your show, you're washed, you're dressed, you've got fresh kit. How did that, but we didn't see you, a little bit disappointed we didn't see you carrying your guitars so you obviously had like the filmmakers carrying you to places, but you camped throughout or B&Bs, or what was the
we stayed in a couple of the like in the cricket club. We just slept on the floor in the cricket club, and we slept on the floor in a football club as well, didn't we?
Yeah, and we camped a couple of nights. There was one night where we were in a B&B or similar, but we didn't get in a vehicle from the beginning to the end. So we stayed on foot. We ran the whole thing. We didn't get in a car to nip up the road. It sort of felt like that would be cheating somehow.
Premier Inn.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Gary did the first one up to the local spa.
No way. I would have been on the football. I'd have been on the ground in the football club. That would have been awesome.
So how did, because you know, lying down on the hard ground and then getting up to run, like, because they were quite decent days, some of those days in between, you've been back by the road, but your bodies look good. You guys look fit as a fiddle. You get up and you seem to be off running. There wasn't so much creaking and whining.
It was a struggle some mornings. I must say.
In the film, we can
but it was relatively easy running in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
it was more just thinking. To me, I think the hardest thing about doing these things is the idea that you're setting up for a show as well, and you've got all that going on, and you, because normally you would, you know, I'm off for running the lakes in a couple of days, and I just think that's the day. That's the day. I don't think, I'm going for a run in the Lake District. Oh, and then I've got to do a couple of Zoom calls, and then I've got to, you know, do a show. And so that to me is the weird thing, trying to put those two things together.
Did you find during some of the shows you got a bit of a nodding dog on, or did the adrenaline? When you've been wind battered as well, sometimes when you sit down, you get a cup of tea, you're like, oh.
Yeah.
There were definitely some shows where there was almost like a performance art element of how addled are they going to be here? How many times is Boff going to have to restart the song because he's forgotten how his fingers work? What is Dan talking about?
Your poor fingers, Boff.
Should we move on to the Hills of Hours 2 that is currently on the road? If any of our listeners are thinking about buying a ticket, could you share with them what they can expect?
It's interesting, the whole These Hills Are Ours thing, because it came up because we both work in things like theatre and arts projects and all that sort of thing, community stuff, and because we always talk about running, why don't we do a show about running? But then you think, what could be, you know, less inviting than two middle-aged blokes on a stage talking about running? And so we thought, let's work out what you can talk about when you're talking about running. When you're talking about escape, and you're talking about digital technology, and you're talking about our relationship to the earth and the land, and you're talking about escape and adventure and land ownership. And so we just thought, let's construct it around all these things and then find a central story to base it on. And we had a really good time putting it together with loads and loads of post-it notes and going away and doing bits of research and doing runs. We did this thing where everywhere we went, you know, from like Bradford and Burnley and Middlesbrough, we would just set off and run to the nearest peak. And that was going to be the show for a while. But then we found a much, much better run to hang it all on. So but essentially it was just a lot of it was an excuse for me and Dan to kind of get together and talk about running and go for a run.
I thought it was a good and a welcome reminder for me, with the Bob Graham round and all the fells, with the mass trespassing. That was 1932. And then what comes up in, I suppose, how the journey evolved, and you did the kind of big run and you're on the Pennine Way. That, our first national trail in 1965. It's not like there was this mass trespass and then all of a sudden everything was open. It's over 30 years. Was that a big kind of motivating point too?
Yeah, that's a really big part of what the show's about. And it kind of starts and finishes with stuff about the Kinder trespass and how much we owe to those Kinder trespassers for our right to be doing any of the runs that we're talking about. And then there's a bit about Tom Stevenson and the Pennine Way. But we forget that lots of the countryside was only opened up in 2005 with the Countryside Rights of Way Act, the right to roam, as it was called. Yeah. And there's still huge swathes of the countryside that's privately owned and inaccessible that we still can't run on, we can't walk on. And, I'm not talking about going running in people's back gardens or whatever, but some people have got very big back gardens in that case. So, where I live in Lancaster, the Forest of Bowland is my local area. It's this kind of not that well known, but it's a huge area of moorland. And most of it was inaccessible until 2005. And now I can run over the whole thing. And before that, it wasn't like the Duke of Westminster was kind of up there having barbecues with his pals every weekend, and people were sort of stumbling on him. It was just reserved for grouse shooting. And they shot a lot of grouse, didn't they? Well, they did, and they still do shoot a lot of grouse. But the grouse shooting season's about 3 weeks, isn't it?
It's crazy.
So So, it turns out that running the rest of the year round is still compatible with the wholesale slaughter of grouse for, a fortnight in August.
Yeah. Reminds me a bit of there's a Billy Bragg song, isn't there? Is it The World Turned Upside Down? Where he talks about the diggers, and I think they're right to farm on common land. It seems very similar.
Yeah. We play that song, not the Billy Bragg version, but we play that song as the audience are coming in.
Oh, awesome.
So that kind of song, the diggers are, 300 years before the Kinder Trespassers were making the same arguments for the fact that the land ought to be, their phrase was a common treasury for all. We ought to all have equal rights to use and enjoy and access the land, to feed our animals on the land, to grow our food on the land. But for well over 1,000 years, it's been owned by people, by a very small number of people. So half the rural land in England and Wales is owned by 0.06% of the population.
Yeah.
And 90% of that land is not accessible. And that seems a bit wonky to me.
It is, yeah. Was it like, I think I might have been when I was doing research for this, it might be something that I read from from the booklet. Is it like, there was all divvied up, like 200 barons or something? Pretty much got the lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, under William the Conqueror, the people who'd helped him conquer the country got huge amounts of it. So, there was unequal land use and access and ownership before that. It wasn't like before the Norman conquest. This was a sort of democratic idyll, but it became much more unequal, and it's remained so in terms of land access. It's remained incredibly unequal since then. There's another show which is much more straightforwardly about land ownership and access, and a bit less about running and all. Like, we talk about this a bit in the show, and it's at the core of it, but it's not the whole thing that the show's about. You can come and enjoy a story about running without really caring that much about it, I guess. But there's another show that goes around called 3 Acres and a Cow, based on the folk song. And that phrase, I'm not sure where it comes from originally, but the idea is that everyone ought to be able to have 3 acres and a cow that's their own, and they could farm that and live off that, and everything else should be held in common. So I think you're allowed to have, no one's saying, well, I suppose some people are saying that there should be absolutely no private ownership of anything, but relatively few people are going all the way along that. And I think as soon as you start talking about equalizing land access, people sort of assume that you're Stalin. And it's a sliding scale between a bit more equality would be nice, isn't it? But let's also murder 15 million people. Yeah, I don't think that's what Boff and I are advocating. No. Certainly, that's not what we get into in the show.
No.
One of the runs that we were going to do when we were planning all this, the theatre shows, we were going to do a few shows in London, and we worked out one place that we could run to, kind of along the canals and the Thames Path, etc. We could run out from where the theatre was out to St George's Hill, which is to the west of London. It's where the diggers set up.
Yeah, camp. Like Weybridge way, isn't it?
Yeah, 1649 it was, and they and where they were thrown off the land. So it's a significant place, and it's a hill. So let's go there. And then we looked into it, and it's Stockbroker Belt. It's walled community. The actual place.
It's a gated community, and loads of it's where like the Chelsea footballers live. I think George Harrison lives there.
Yeah.
It's
John Lennon
Millionaire's Row.
Yeah. So you get there and you think, oh, okay. Well, what's changed in the last kind of 400 years? Not that much, really.
Just triathletes live there. There won't be any trail runners. Just triathletes with like bikes.
Yeah, people with £20,000 bicycles.
On the rollers in the basement. Initially, it was these individual journeys from city centres to towns to a peak, but then it evolved into a 90-mile journey. Could you explain?
As they do.
Yes, as they do. And it's
perfectly novel to me and Gary. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah.
It sounded really bleak at points. I'd love it if you could share a bit about that.
We had all of these individual stories, and we were putting the show together, and it just felt like it was this bit, then this bit, then this bit, and it didn't quite have a spine. It didn't quite have a backbone, and there wasn't enough of a thread connecting all of these stories up. It was like the difference between a collection of short stories and a novel, and it needed a bit more novel to just keep the audience coming along with it, we felt. And so we thought, well, what happens if we try and join some of these stories up? What kind of journey could we make? So we ended up coming up with this idea of a journey from where I live in Lancaster, over the Forest of Bowland, over to Pendle, where Boff, near Burnley, where Boff grew up, and eventually all the way down along the Pennine Way to Kinder Scout. And that seemed like a good idea. And we were going to do this together, I should say.
Yeah.
Yes, explain what happened there.
About a month beforehand, I broke my toe, but I didn't break it doing, I don't really get running injuries. I get stupid injuries from falling off sledges and cutting my hand with an axe and things like that. So this was just actually walking downstairs, running down the stairs to come down for tea.
Oh, you were so excited about your tea. And you broke your toe.
It wasn't even eating tea. It was just a cup of tea.
Oh. Really?
Yeah. And I thought, that hurt a bit, but it'll be all right. And then about 3 days later, I was in agony and I couldn't walk.
Breaking.
But I thought, well, that's all right, because Dan needed someone to kind of drive the van with lots of food in it anyway. So I'll do that bit.
There's a bit of a thread of smugness in that van during the run of like, and you're in the van.
No, I was feeling incredibly guilty. I wasn't smug, honestly.
There was a particularly bleak point, I think, is it around Wessenden Head, if memory's right? I imagine you had two completely different experiences of the events that were unfolding. You were pretty stressed out, and I think Dan, maybe not so happy, but you were kind of trotting along.
I lost my bearings a little bit. I knew how to get back to where I knew I was. I knew how to get back to somewhere where I knew I was on the map, definitely. And I was pretty sure where I was, but I just couldn't find the path that the map was promising me was going to be there. So
I don't know. I've seen you map reading on film. I'm not completely convinced by it.
Yeah, my map reading is adequate, but it's not great. So this is like the absolute dead of night as well, I should say. It's like sometime after midnight. And Boff had sort of seen that I was going around in circles and that navigation was starting to suffer a little bit. And then shortly after that, the dot on my tracker just stopped. Boff, do you want to pick up from there?
Yeah, and it just because I'm a bit of a kind of I'm not a great lover of digital technology in a lot of ways. I always think if you can use a compass and a map, then you should do. But I always imagine that Dan, he gets a compass out and he's just looking for the LED lights on it. So, watching this dot stopped, I realised that I was completely helpless because it was the middle of the night. It was freezing, and there was snow and ice on the ground. Well, I just thought, what do I do? What are you supposed to do? And obviously the thing that we should have done is we wouldn't have had a tracker. We would have said, well, we can't be running at night alone in the middle of winter across, Pennine Hills. That would be just stupid. It was only at that point upon the Pennine Moors when I was sitting there that I realised this. So I just didn't enjoy it. It was kind of going up for an hour of just sitting there thinking, there's nothing I can do. I should be ringing Mountain Rescue and the police, really. There's my mate down, he's down there somewhere. God knows what's happened to him. Whereas Dan was just like happily trotting along towards me, and I had no idea.
That must have been terrifying. I just can't imagine it. Like literally, you'd be mindful of Dan's family, and obviously the emergency services. And then ultimately, obviously, it was a happy ending to the story. Dan appeared from the dark.
Actually, Dan never appeared, and we just got a doppelganger in who's much better to me.
Do you think that was the low point of that 90-mile journey? Well,
I didn't enjoy that section, I must admit, or the Black Hill section, or it all became a bit my role, which I've been a supporter, because I've done it for people doing the Bob Graham and stuff. I know what I'm supposed to do and where I'm supposed to be and all that sort of thing. Whereas this was different. I thought, we're doing something and we're being a bit dafty, and we should have taken a bit more care over it. And of course, that adds jeopardy into the story. So then you start thinking, oh, well, maybe it's good for the story in the same way as
This is what I was
pouring
thinking.
rain.
I was thinking but it's brilliant for the show.
I do love
I
Jeopardy.
know, but I couldn't really think that at the time.
You're much nicer people than me and Darren. I was thinking, this is terrible, but it's great for the podcast.
Could have been a great one-man show, couldn't it?
Oh, wowzers. What about the high points, though? Any particular high moments from the journey?
For me, the high points were mostly relatively early in it. And from the point that you've just talked about, it did become quite bleak in a way that, yeah, with hindsight, I recognize as making for a good story. But at the time, it just became quite difficult. But
running over Pendle was nice.
Yeah, there was between, I don't know, sort of miles about 30 and between about mile 30 and 50, there were low points, but there were also high points. Coming over Pendle was great. We ran that bit together, and that was lovely. And at that point, it was about 30 miles in, and I was still feeling pretty good and feeling like I was moving well. And then I had a big dip at about 40 miles and a bit of a, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to do this. I should also say that this whole thing was at that point more than twice as far as I'd ever run before. I've now covered that sort of distance a couple of times, but at the time, that was also, well, this will make for a good story, because doing really stupid things often does make for a good story, but it still doesn't necessarily mean that you should do them. But then after that dip at about 40 miles, again, I felt my legs kind of start to rally, or I just figured out how to move with legs that don't want to move. And that was incredibly satisfying. So at about mile 50, I thought, I'm doing all right here.
Easy. I'm an international ultra runner. I knew it. This is my calling.
And then it got dark, and that was when I started to struggle. Which is also when I started to struggle on my Bob Graham. Actually, got dark going up Great Gable, and I was absolutely flying round leg 4. And then as soon as it got dark, I just slowed down a little bit.
Which is funny because you're like a nighttime performer, and you'd think once it got dark, your body would go, "Here's my moment, showtime."
Yeah, which is fine if you've, but you've not normally been doing a show for 24 hours already by that point.
Maybe this could be a concept for the next tour.
Yes, for sure.
Ultra shows.
I'd say because one of the things that I loved about the reason I wanted to do the Bob Graham, even though nobody in my club had the slightest interest in doing it, I kind of asked everyone, "Hey, I'm thinking of doing the Bob Graham." Everyone's like, "What? Why?" And I wanted to do it because of the story. And I think for me, it's the story that makes the culture and history and context of a run. It's fascinating. I think if you just if you just get like fastest known time for going from A to B, I think that's fantastic for people who want to do that. But for me, it's meaningless. Whereas if you're doing something that people know about outside the sport, or that it's got a great story attached. Bob Graham in his plimsolls doing it with his bag of sandwiches. I just think that's fantastic. I want to do that. And then when I finished it, people said, "Oh, what are you going to do next?" And I was like, I don't want to do anything else. I just wanted to do that one.
I love it. I used to, before my Bob Graham attempt, I think I bought about 5 pairs of trainers, and then I look at the picture of Bob Graham and I just think Bob wasn't buying shoes left, right, and centre for his attempt. No, it's so wonderful.
I mean, Bob Graham's shorts probably weighed as much as my entire kit.
It is crazy. It is amazing what you say, like how you can go from "I'm loving this" to "I'm not enjoying this." Now I want to get off the felt.
Yeah, and for people who've experienced that, ultra runners experience it all the time. Even to the point of hallucination and everything. Yeah. And that's I find that interesting. I think it's not something that appeals to me, but I think it's a great story.
Something as well that I think for me it happened round about the top of Red Pike on leg 4, that I started to think, I'm going to get round here. I've got enough time in the bank. I'm going to do this. And to be able to then have that feeling for the next 5 hours is really special. And you've got to really, you've got to put in the work for that to be satisfying. And, it's in jeopardy all the way up until that point because you just don't know what's going to go wrong. I remember when I got married, someone saying to me, remember to just take a pause sometimes and to enjoy the day, because otherwise you get so caught up in all of everything that you need to be focusing on that you forget to have a nice time. And I remember supporting a couple of Bob Grahams and sharing that story, and people thinking, oh yeah, I do just need to enjoy the fact that here we are doing this. Just such a special thing to be able to do. And then when I was doing mine, I have to take some time to remember that this is an incredible privilege to be doing this, even when it's in jeopardy, even when it's pouring with rain and you can't see a thing. How lucky are we to be able to do this? Like the amount of historical privilege that represents, partly because of people who've won us the right to do it, but also because of the coincidence of history and birth and all the rest of it. To be able to make ourselves that miserable is a privilege, and we have to
I think about that
up.
Especially as a woman. I think about that. Like, I think, God, maybe even 50 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to do what I do now. 100 years ago, definitely not. The women that have gone in front of me to fight the way that I can go out in a pair of shorts and t-shirt and run on a trail and it to be totally normal thing. And I think we too often take that for granted and don't follow in the footsteps of our sort of trail predecessors to say thank you. And that's a real thread that I think comes through in your film as well, so that we should be grateful.
It's something we talk about a bit in the show as well. It's easy for us as two middle-aged white blokes to say, well, why don't you just strap on your head torch and go for a run over the pathless moors in the dead of night? But that's obviously not such an easy choice for women even now, and certainly for people of colour. It is a privilege to be able to do that so easily. And one of the things we want to do with the show is kind of advertise the fact that these rights exist, but also to kind of demand that they become more widely available, and to demand those rights for everybody, not just us.
You've done one tour show. What's the schedule looking like? A heady schedule, night after night?
We've got 3 or 4 weeks that are quite busy, sort of 4, 5, 6 shows a week through June. And then we'll have more, if people are looking for tour dates, we've got loads more coming up in September and December as well. Mostly those September and December ones are down south, but there's a couple more up north. There's a couple in the northeast. There's one in Scotland. There's a few more coming up. But once we get out, it's turn up at the venue, set up for the show, do the show, and then next day get up, go for a run with the audience, drive to the next venue, do it again. So they're exciting long days.
Where can people find tickets and venue information?
Yeah, they're on my website. So that's www.danielby.co.uk. And there's a full list of the June dates up on there. And the September and December dates will go up there in about a month, I think, once they're all on sale. And they'll go on there as well.
Sheffield next, isn't it? Is that right?
Yes, yeah. So this next block of the tour starts at the Crucible in Sheffield.
And apart from the tour, are there any big running adventures coming up for either of you anymore? I know we won't talk about FKTs, but anything in the pipeline, anything you'd still like to do, any bucket list trails?
I don't think I have any at all, other than just enjoying going out running. And yeah, because I've recently had COVID, and it's kind of stopped me running for a little while. And so again, you get back into it, and you kind of it's just a joy to think, I can do this every day if I want, and it's brilliant. Yeah, I'm sure Dan's got some goals and aims.
Yeah, I've got a place at the Lakeland 100 for end of July.
So you're there, Dan?
But as I said at the beginning of the podcast, I've been really ill this year. And so I'll do 6 miles again tomorrow. And I think that'll make it my biggest week this year, just getting up to 18 miles for the week. So whether or not I make it to Lakeland 100, I think is still an open question. But if I do, it'll definitely be thinking of it as a kind of a catered hike rather than trying to be competitive. But I've got the place, and I'd like to do it if I can. So that's my next thing if it happens. I've got a place at Spine Challenger in January next year, so that'll be the next big thing,
Oh my goodness.
whether or not Lakeland 100 happens.
I think those.
I think he's stalking us. Gary.
I love those long days, just grazing your way through the trails. I think they're probably the best way to do it than trying to rinse yourself for 20 whatever hours.
But then obviously I'll get to sort of 30 miles and think, wonder if I could just wind it up a little bit.
But don't do it at 30. There's a long way in at 35.
No.
Yeah,
I've gone too hard. I've gone too hard. Oh my God. It's a long walk home.
All right, well, wonderful. Thanks for your time today, guys. But we always end our show with 5 quick questions. I don't think we've answered any of these yet. So,
Oh, good.
and you can both answer them. This is not just exclusive for one of you. Both dive in as you see fit. Okay, number 1, you finished a long day on the trails. There's a kettle there in the corner, a couple of tea bags. Who's the first to put the kettle on?
Ooh, probably me.
Yes, I knew it. You're my favourite. I knew it.
Look, Dan's disagreeing.
No, I think you're probably right.
Yeah, and in my case, it would be peppermint and licorice.
Oh,
Oh,
That's the current.
take it all back.
not your favourite anymore. Next question is, when does a hill become a mountain?
This is a point of huge controversy in the show. So we always ask this question in the show, and people come up with all sorts of like brilliant and bizarre and amazing answers. Like, you know, it's pointy or there's snow on the top. And then Boff absolutely punctures it by having a definition that he got from like, the Royal Geographical Society in 1894 or something.
2,000 feet.
2,000 feet.
Yeah, definitely. And because when you, another thing, apart from the fact that I know this because Pendle Hill is just less than that, and everybody around where I grew up knew that. But when you're doing the Pennine Way as a relay, then and in quite a few other races as well, you have to be in pairs at the 2,000 feet mark, and that's because that's considered to be that's the point where it becomes like real. So on those relays, you have someone waiting at the 2,000 feet while someone runs up alone, and then somebody else joins them for the top bit.
Oh, wow.
Oh, poor person waiting if the weather's filthy. And
I know, absolutely. I know.
Oh,
Yeah.
they're walking again. Come on, run.
Yeah.
I was thinking about the poor, I did the Old County Tops the other week, and the poor marshals up on Helvell and Scarfell Pike and Coniston. I just thought, wow, and it's a long day. And it's not, it's all of the, maybe Helvellyn's quite accessible, but Scarfell and Coniston isn't just a little 5-minute trot up, it's quite an investment to get there.
Absolutely, yeah.
After a long day on the trails, do you clean your shoes or do you just let them fester in the bog juices? Probably
For the last 25 years, I haven't ever cleaned a pair of fell running shoes.
Oh, Boff. No.
They don't smell though.
They've got acid in them, the bogs. We had a chat with the Innovate people. They told us they've got acid in. Give them a clean.
You're meant to
they'll last longer, if you give them a clean.
That's probably true. I just stick them on the...
Life's too short. Life's too short.
It is. Life's too short. Yeah.
Exactly,
Dan, come on.
I sometimes
clean them with a toothbrush.
No, I've never cleaned a pair of running shoes either. I sometimes put a bit of newspaper in them if they're absolutely soaking wet.
Yeah.
So actually, relatively recently, because of not having been out running that much, I went out on the fells a while ago and found a pair of shoes which still had newspaper in. And these were my Bob Graham shoes 6 months on. I hadn't worn them that whole time. So they were just still there, stuffed with slightly soggy newspaper.
Nice.
Yeah.
Right, 120 miles across Devon and then 90 miles. Any standout bits of kit?
We were a bit appalled by your kit, to be fair, because there was quite a lot of close-up shots of you all getting dressed and undressed. People might enjoy that, but you were wearing a lot of kit that all looked very wet.
Yeah.
Everything waterproof is waterproof up to a point, isn't it? And that day over Dartmoor was about 6 hours of just horizontal rain and 50-mile-an-hour winds. Not many waterproofs are going to stand up to that. So I was wearing 2 layers of waterproofs and was still wet absolutely through. I was kind of peeling things off. It almost got to the point where you just needed a pair of scissors to get some of them off. So yeah, it's hard to recommend any kit based on that experience, frankly.
No.
What shoes did you run in?
I did the Saunders Lakeland Marathon in the early 2000s, and I got there and it came to kit check, and I realised I didn't have any waterproof trousers, over trousers. So I had to buy some from the store. I just said, whatever your cheapest thing is. And they said, well, we've got these, but they're extra, extra large. They'll do. So I can stick them in my bag. And then I ended up wearing it. That's what they became my trousers. So when I wore them on the Devon thing, really high winds across Dartmoor, I was practically lifted off the mountain. They were ballooning out like clown trousers.
Excellent. What about footwear?
Well, for quite a lot of that run across Devon, I wore Hawkers, actually. I wore Hawker speed boots.
Partly because bum the whole time.
A little bit on the grassy sections. But I'd had a foot injury for quite a bit before that, and I just needed a bit of cushion. Just wasn't doing well at hitting the ground hard. So I wore those for most of that. And I found them, I really like them actually. And they're good for kind of long traily stuff that's not too rough. But then obviously they're no good on something like the Bob Graham. So that was a pair of, they were Innovate, the X-Talon Ultra something or other, 260 maybe.
I think so.
Who knows? They just put numbers at the end of them.
Yeah.
It's all very important, those numbers.
Oh, what else?
I wear Welsh shoes. Because there's only like 2 or 3 types, and you just think, yeah, I'll have them again.
Yeah.
They're comfy, they'll do.
Very good. Yeah, I've never tried the Welsh. I see lots of people with them and the fell races.
Oh, they're lovely.
Yeah. Last question. Okay, you rock up at Sheffield for your next...
The Crucible. Drop the
Crucible. Which out of the 2 have got the most outrageous rider requests?
It's unfortunately touring theatre is not like touring rock and roll.
Oh, go on.
So, yeah, but our rider, basically the rider just says, no moe, no shoe, no shandon, no bandon. It's an old joke, but it always works.
Yours just says peppermint tea, please.
Yeah.
With
licorice. It's got to have licorice in.
Oh, sorry. Licorice.
Otherwise, I strop. I just throw the teacup across the room. And
the bar goes, everything goes.
Gigs off.
I'm not singing.
Yeah.
Smashes his guitar.
Questions done there. You guys were easy for that. Thank you. What a privilege to have you.
That was really enjoyable.
Thank you so much. I only wish
that was great.
In the UK, maybe I'll tie it in with a September Pennine Way recce and a show. What a treat that would be. But yeah, go and check them out. Watch the film. I'll put it on the Facebook.
Are you doing the Spine, Eddie?
I am doing the Spine.
Oh, brilliant.
Great. See you there.
See you there. Will you come past me? Do you start?
Well, the Challenger, I think, starts a bit earlier. So
I'll come past you and you'll be really...
You might well come past me. Yeah. Depends on whether I'm fit. I think we get a decent head start. So I'd sort of...
come past you, I'll just go, hi. Awkward.
Yeah.
No, thank you so much. Go and check out the tour dates. And Gary, you'll have to find a local one to use so you can go and find.
Yeah, I looked at only there's
You've got some local ones in September, Gary. We're in Washington and I think it's Hexham. The ones that were meant to happen in February. So we've definitely got some local to you. Early-ish September.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. It'd be great.
Best of luck with the show and with the running, and I hope to catch up with you both soon.
Thanks very much.
Take care.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.
What a treat, Eddie.
What a treat.
Sometimes I pinch myself. It's a real privilege to do this show. And moments like that, two people share that time with us. And I was really, it's hard to imagine not being able to roam like we do now. And, I knew about the Kin Scout and the mass trespass, but to be reminded of it and how important it is and how significant it is for people who run on the trails and the fells, I think it's quite important. So I really hope you all enjoyed that.
And the way the music is threaded through that as well.
Wonderful.
I love music, and I also really love that sort of music. And I think a lot of our listeners will love that sort of music too. You can actually buy the album on Daniel's webpage, but so I'm definitely going to do that as well. So what a treat if you see Daniel at Lakeland 100, or maybe at the Spine.
Yeah.
Give them a shout, or go buy tickets. If you go to the show, let us know how you get on. Get a selfie with them. Oh my God, so many ideas.
With your Under the Hills buff.
The ultimate. I gotta get you on the show if you manage that.
Oh, I had some donuts at the weekend. They were pretty awesome.
Oh, nice. What
Jam
for?
donuts.
Jam filled, plain.
Yeah, just a jam one.
It's nothing better than a donut, is it? Did you do the challenge? You weren't allowed to lick your lips for the whole donut? Or
No, I didn't. No. Well, I've got a little. I'm not too keen on the Morrison donuts. They have like a floury sugar. I like it.
What? No, just
I like a bit of proper sugar.
Crystal sugar. None of this. Do you think it's like a sort of cheap Morrison's thing that they put like?
I don't know. I wasn't too happy.
Money. It makes a bit.
Yeah. Crispy sugar. Classic.
Anyway, what we got coming up this week, there's a Pegasus Vogum, 40 miles along the Welsh Coast Path this Saturday. That could be lovely, or it could be very hard if the weather. Don't know what the weather's looking like. Good luck if you're doing that.
Do they suffer from midgies along the Welsh coastline? Is it a midgie fest?
Don't know. Guess it depends on the weather, doesn't it?
I know these guys next for me, the National Three Peaks, when Ben Nevis starts, they will be on Midgie Watch. And that, again, another race I'm just like, I'm tired just thinking about. It's like 430 or 450 miles, depending on a few route variations, pretty much self-supported over 10 days. It's not a stage race. The clock keeps ticking, but I think you're advised to, when you can, if there's like an indoor checkpoint, get your feet up and get some sleep. But yeah, Ben Nevis, Scarfell Pike and Snowdon, and you're self-supported in between all of those peaks too. 10 days. Oh my goodness me. I'll be
yeah, if anyone knows anyone that's doing that, let us know. I'd like to chat with anyone. Haven't they tried that before? Maybe like nobody finished or something? Is that my
I don't know. But yeah, I don't even think I'd want to enter and toe the line with one of these races. Just kudos for somebody entering and getting yourself in a kind of shape that you think you can complete it is just amazing. So best of luck, everybody.
Gary and I, we've been struggling with this part of the show. What we got coming up? It's a bit blank.
Well, for me, normally it's like, it was all county tops and it was the Hardmoor support. I think next weekend I've got Swaledale marathons, but this weekend is a rare treat. I'm going to take it as a treat, Eddie, that I can actually do training, not an event where there's a consequence to the before and after. So hopefully I'll get some 2 weeks or a week and a half at least of good training. Actually stick to the plan instead of just being wiped out until Wednesday.
Detraining.
Yeah, detraining. Exactly. That's I've been having a bit of anxiety about this whole, because Lakeland 100, I get the emails like 9 weeks to go, whatever it is, 10 weeks to go. And I can't argue. I'm smashing the elevation. There's no issues with that. I'm doing big volume, 80 plus miles a week, lots of time on feet. But because I'm not really, I don't really have the energy to do the workouts that I'd like to do, I'm just kind of latching onto that one negative. In the scheme of things, I'm probably doing well, but I still don't feel like I'm properly in the groove for Lakeland 100 training. And, 9 or 10 weeks before you know it, it'll be 6 weeks and then it'll be taper time. So I need to be a bit more mindful about how I'm going to approach these weeks coming up. But
not after the Swaledale Marathon.
Dales, and then I've got, and this is going to wipe me out again. Then I did St Cuthbert's Way, which I thought at the time would be an awesome last long run. But because it's a tidal issue for the people who are doing the 100K for when they get to Holy Island, so that determines start times for the race. And I didn't realize, and I could be wrong, I need to double check, but I think it starts at like 12 o'clock at night. So that's another running through the night, 45 miles through the night, which is not great. So, but it is what it is. Suck it up, own it. Because I don't think you get any. The people, something, you know, a few years ago, maybe there was this, you know, you train through the night to get this sleep deprivation, and I just don't think that there's any value in that.
There's too much, as you know. The Tuesday knock on, it just wipes you out for a good. I know, because I went camping, and that was.
But other than that, yeah, watching Stranger Things, we're back on that on Netflix, which is awesome, and Kenobi too over on Disney.
How scary is it? It's like flashed up a few times on like Netflix adverts, and I'm like, aren't they all zombies or something?
No. Well, the one I'd watched, not zombie. There's something quite scary happens right at the end of the episode. No spoilers for people. Yeah, I don't want to say too much actually, because it would spoil people if they haven't watched it. But I've got quite a high bar. You know, I grew up watching Evil Dead and Exorcist and stuff like that. So my fear factor is okay with films and TV. But yeah, it's quite weird. Like we all sit and watch. It's like our family viewing, and it's probably.
Oh my God.
What am I doing? Oh yeah, I'm still on with the knee rehab. I'm not really talking about knee, so I thought I would bring it up. What I am doing, I'm icing it quite a lot, which is good. I'm carrying on with the strength and conditioning. Be mindful with that, and maybe a few ibuprofen too. I don't really want to advocate that, as people make their own decisions as far as that's concerned. So yeah, quite still on with the knee rehab, but I am functioning. It's moving. It's not getting any worse, which is good. But I do really, it does me well. You know, I think, say today I could be limping around and I'll be quite anxious, maybe say for doing the Harmos 110 support. But it always just seems to be like, it's fine. It does it. It gets me through, and then I suffer a bit afterwards, and then I've got anxiety for a race like Old County Tops or Swaledale. But so far, it's showed up, and it's got me through the varying kind of support running I've been doing our races. So yeah, lots of icing, which is good, and lots of strength exercises. I'm trying to do 2 kind of glutes and thighs a week. Because basically I think it's IT band, which is where the pain on my outside of my knee is. That seems to, when I've tried to do a Google bit of self-diagnosis, that seems to be what it is, IT band. And it seems to stack up with what it is. So lots of foam rolling, strength work and icing. So that's what I'm doing to keep me running, and it seems to be working so far. That's me for this week. What about yourself?
Nothing. Mine is blank. My life is blank.
It is literally, the script is blank.
Script is blank. Oh, it's so boring, isn't it? I'm in such a boring part of my rehab because I'm just sort of like getting back into the running. There's nothing. Carrying on with all that. Oh my God, this strength and conditioning takes up so much time. My 180 calf raises morning and night. In fact, my stool that I've been doing my calf raises on is about to break now. I've done so many, it goes and not in the fun way. And so that stool might not last. I don't know how many weeks I'm into this. You're meant to do 12 weeks of 180 calf raises a day. Yesterday I did them in the gym, and I got on the Smith machine and I just went up a step, and then I put like 20 kilograms on, and then I was doing like single legged. I think that might be why it's a bit sore as well today.
Oh yeah.
But just to mix it up, because I was like, oh my God, I have to stand on this stool one more time and do any more calf raises.
Well, hats off to you, Eddie. 12 weeks, man. That's a lot of rehab.
Oh, I've still got a few more weeks. I think I've missed one evening when I was like, I cannot face any more calf raises. But I try and just do it like when in the morning when the kids are having breakfast, and then in the evening when Bryn's cooking me my dinner. There's a theme around that.
Isn't it? I always, like with my foam rolling, I'm sitting watching the news, and foam rolling, I'm sitting watching. I feel, when you're trying to fit it all in, you're never completely relaxing.
That's why I've sort of gone, right, I do those calf raises. I go to the gym to do my mobility and my strength. Done, tick that. And then it's not at home. I try and do a run every day. I try and do my bike every day. And then that's it. And then the minute the kids come home, I try and that's it, done. Turn that switch off. I love it if I don't have to do any training in the evening when they're back and I can just be basically whining at them. They would say, do your homework, where's your socks, where's your shoes? So yeah, just carrying on. As anyone knows who's in this bit of a phase of an injury, it's a bit like, it feels like there's nothing really to look forward to because I don't want to make any plans because I don't want any disappointments. Yeah. And it's all a bit samey. Can't really do any sessions when I'm running, can't really go that far. Don't really want to run with anybody because they'd be so appalled at my lack of fitness, and then I'd just be sad because of it. But I reckon, last week I was like, couldn't even run up the hill. This week I can run around some hills. So next week, hopefully there'll be a little bit more of excitement, not just sort of endless rehab. So sorry if that's a bit boring and beige, everybody. You tell me on Facebook what you're doing. I'm sure that's far more exciting.
The reality of running, isn't it? It's not always PBs.
I might, do you know what I might do? I might use my Summer Spine Montaigne discount code and go and buy myself a new top. That's why I might do a bit of rehab, self-care purchasing.
Yeah. I always like buying stuff when I'm injured.
Right, we've got any reviews? Read me something nice that someone said about us, Gary.
So, I'm not a fell runner or an ultra marathoner. In fact, my first marathon, a road marathon, is in a few weeks away. Well, a few weeks away. However, this is my favorite and my go-to running podcast. Like all good podcasts, each listen is like going over to an old friend's place and catching up about how our week's been. Ben, Nigel, Potts via Apple Podcast. That was January, February, March. So it was quite a while ago.
Ben, we hope you've done your old
stuff. I hope it went really well. Thanks so much, Ben.
I've got some breaking news. Literally, as you read that, we had breaking news from Cheercharge HQ, a message on our frequently used WhatsApp group. Quick message from Tim Taylor. We will be selling and promoting the Run to the Hills bandanas from tomorrow. So that's this week, if you're listening to it, the week of the beginning of June. If you spend £35, mere snippet of most people's vast fortunes, you will get a free Run to the Hills bandana. I don't think I've heard a better deal for...
What a time to be alive, Eddie, eh?
What a time to be alive. And actually, I love my Run to the Hills bandana, though I feel a bit of a noob wearing it. But it's a lovely soft material, just say that. So if you love the podcast, support the podcast. Oh my God, Gary would wet his pants if he was doing a race and he saw someone else wearing the Run to the Hills bandana. And then
I love my Run to the Hills bandana. It's the right weight and it keeps my little apple ear.
I tell you who else loves their Run to the Hills bandana. They're nearly always sporting on their Instagram page. Ooh. Russell Bentley.
Awesome.
He can't get enough of it. He's always wearing his.
You've got to keep me in check, actually. I noticed, I listened back to last week's show and the amount of times I said awesome was embarrassing. So if you hear me say awesome on the podcast.
Well, there could be worse words that you say.
Well, I've gone from my goodness.
Yes, you used to do. Oh my dear. No, you used to say.
Oh my goodness me.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Oh.
I was saying awesome all the time. I was like, what the hell, Gary?
You're awesome.
Thanks for listening, everybody. And that was episode 92. Thank you to Cheercharge for continuing to support the show, sending bars to guests, competition winners, keeping Eddie and I fueled in our adventures, and generally being an all-round super supporter to everyone out on the trails. My name's Gary Thwaites.
I'm Eddie Sutton.
And let's run to the hills.